Well, I had a little glitch, and so I have to do a second recording. So, sorry about that. Anyway, project-based learning. So let's just talk about what is project-based learning, the 9 elements of project-based learning. 3 ways to think about it, though, is that a project is authentic. It does have a connection to the real world. It is more long-term than just maybe hours or minutes in time to do it. It's probably going to take more days. And there's a product that results from the project-based learning. So the students actually have to create something in project-based learning that showcases their knowledge. So these are the 9 elements of project-based learning, and I talk about these in probably almost every class because project-based learning is such a wonderful tool for helping us to learn and for helping students to learn and for using technology as a part of that process. So the first one, we'll go through each of these 9 and then show them again. First one is the anchor, and this is an opportunity for the teacher to introduce and generate interest into the project. And oftentimes an anchor, in order to generate that interest, needs to have a real-world connection and provide a compelling reason for students to become involved in the project. So you might say something like, I want you to become scientists today or this week with our project, and you are going to be able to do what these guys are doing in the real world. So maybe there's a real world connection there, or maybe there's a current event from the news, or maybe there's something else you can connect this to that is a real world item or experience or event. So that's one thing to know about the anchor. It introduces and generates interest. It doesn't tell what exactly the project might be yet. That's for later, but it kind of generates that interest. Now this next one is a task or driving question, but I think the task is really what we're talking about. It's what the students need to do for their project. Whether that is a video on Shakespeare or a poster about hygiene or whatever it is, it's got to be a project, right? You have to clarify what the requirements are for students. You narrow and focus the discussion and project work by telling them what they need to complete. And it helps students know what to do or look up as part of their project-based learning experience. So again, this is going to be an opportunity for you to share what the particulars of the task are and what types of things that they need to introduce. It's good to share a few examples of the project that you would like to see. If you have some from a previous class, you can do that. But being able to share these items and what the requirements for the project are is the task. Next one, student choices. There are students that they get to go forth and do the project. While they're going forth and doing the project, they get to select maybe a different type of project to do. Maybe they get choices on how to go about doing the project. Maybe they get to select resources and designs to use, or maybe there are other choices to use. By the way, these steps are not necessarily one after the other. They could be, student choices will probably come later in the project after you give them some more directions and so forth. But yeah, student choices. Give them some choices. Let them choose what they might do or how they might proceed. There has to be some student choice. And remember that how many student choices you give depends upon really what your students are ready for. So it needs to be developmentally appropriate to your students. So that's why I have this arrow here. It reminds you that, some students can have a lot of choice, some students can have just a little choice, but you want to give them some. So after you introduce the task to students, you'll want to share some directions with them too, how to proceed on the projects maybe, or what items must be addressed or what must be submitted. This gives you a little bit more clarity on what the task is all about and also how to take the first steps on the project. So you want to give that to students as well. Here are your directions, and give them some guidance throughout the project as well. This doesn't just happen after the task, but throughout the project you'll talk to students about how they're doing and give them further directions on how to proceed. Student inquiry and or innovation is part of a project. In this case, we're talking about inquiry, and the idea here is that students are going to be looking things up. They're often part of a project-based learning experience is that students will look information up as part of the inquiry process. And then it's a student-centered process though, so they have ideas and innovations that they try out as well. But I think student inquiry is the big idea here, is that are they looking up information? Are they using that in good ways? Are they using that in a way that it's integrated into the project? Student collaboration and teamwork. This one's probably an obvious one. As you think about project-based learning, there's often student collaboration and teamwork. Students are working together, and they might have roles that they play as they work together, but it's a group experience for them. Teacher coaching and feedback might be obvious too, right? Obviously, you're not going to sit back and just let them go forth. You want to be actively involved in their project progress and give them good guidelines and ideas and try to keep them on task as they work toward the project. And it's important to have the project requirements that are clear in order to help students to be on task. If the project requirements aren't very clear, then you can have a lot of problems with students getting off task. But if they understand the project requirements and also have good directions on what to do, then they often will stay on task a little bit better. Student reflection is a part of project-based learning as well, and this could be done in a number of ways. You can have students reflect upon their performance so far in the project. How are we doing? How can we improve? You can have them do this by talking about it as a class or as individuals, as a group. You could have journals that they might have to keep about the project progress and what they would like to do next on the project and so forth. But the reflection could be on both the project itself and on their process. Are we following a good process? Are we making progress the way that we should? As well as, are we doing the project requirements well enough? And then usually this is the last step of project-based learning, public presentation. This gives students an opportunity to share their project they have created to a wider variety and group of people. And so, yeah, you can have them share it with just the class that they're in already. That's the easiest thing to do because there don't have to be any there's not a reason to have other arrangements. But you can also share it to as wide an audience as possible, and that's what project-based learning models usually suggest, is to try to get it to be something that can be shared to more than just your class. So that might include a presentation or a podcast or a website, put it on the school website, maybe share it to other classes, maybe there's a possibility of it being in the local news, blogs, newsletters, posters, magazines, those kinds of things. Is there a way to share this project outcome to a wider audience? And what really becomes compelling for a wider audience to be shared is that if the project really is a meaningful work and something that really does have impact. And some projects will in education. Those are the big ones that require a lot of planning. Some projects will not. And so you just have to consider that. So those are the 9 elements of project-based learning. And you are going to look at these elements and kind of see how you can design some learning that follows project-based learning. And again, as I mentioned, I talk about these in probably almost every class, and the reason why is because it is such an important part, I think, of a lot of frameworks. It just touches on so many frameworks that we learn about in educational technology, and it works so well with technological tools and resources because they can support students in creating so many different types of projects and products from their projects. And even sharing those, technology helps with that. So you get chances to create more project-based learning experiences. Maybe you've already created some. I think most of you probably have in other classes that you've taken from me. But I can't stress this enough. We have the 21st Century Skills Framework that supports this idea of students being innovative and working together and so forth. We have the ISTE NET standards. For those of you who've taken my 385 class, you know about those. And those, again, many of those project-based learning touches on so many more of those than almost any other form of learning. And we have, of course, your core content standards and higher order learning with those content standards, where students are creating something to show their learning. There's just so many places where these fit. So that's why we talk about them in so many places. So anyway, project-based learning, that's the intro to that. And then I did want to share just a little bit more about the readings too. I really like some of the readings that we're looking at and that we have talked about a bit. And I like the smart uses or brilliant uses of technology that teachers have, and the not so smart uses of technology that teachers have from the book. And so I wanted to highlight on a few of those things. And so that's what I'll do next. So let's see if I can pull that one up now. So as we think about classroom technology, and I like this thing, brilliant and stupid things teachers do with technology. Stupid mistakes include just technical things like not backing up, treating a school computer like a home computer, meaning having a bunch of personal things on there that probably shouldn't be there. Not supervising students when they use technology. Thinking any communication is private. And this is a problem because any online communication, because this can cost you your job if you post things that are inappropriate. Even on your own time and not as the school, you can get fired for this, so it's kind of tough. Believing that teaching style need not change with the use of technology. And teaching style does need to change when we implement technology. That goes back to the grocery store, grocery truck metaphor that I shared earlier. You know, if you don't ever change, it's the teaching method that helps. And if you don't ever change the teaching method, then you don't see maybe the improvements in learning. And thinking technology in schools will go away, or ignoring your interest in technology or student interest in technology are two bad things as well. But brilliant things, empowering kids with technology and creating, finding, and using resources. So this is an example of a Wiimote being hacked in order to support in the classroom in order to create an interactive whiteboard. There was a teacher who didn't have money to get a smart board. Their district didn't have time for that or money for that to get a Promethean or smart board. So the teacher hacked this Wiimote and got some infrared pens and was able to create their own interactive whiteboard with about $50 because the Wiimote and the pens cost about $50. So that was kind of an interesting idea. Making conferencing real time, in other words, communicating with parents in real time might be an opportunity for you. Those are brilliant things mentioned in the book. Putting kids in touch with the world, why not, right? We have lots of tools out there. There's Skype for connecting us to other classrooms around the world. And there's even a game called Mystery Skype where you can have your students learn about geography when you set it up so that you connect with another teacher somewhere else in the world. And then your students connect with them over Skype, and you try to figure out where each other is. So as a teacher, you don't tell your students where the other class is. They have to guess that by asking yes and no questions and using their geography knowledge and books to do that. And there's actually a website that helps you to set this up. It's kind of interesting. Accepting a role as co-learner is important. You are a co-learner with your students. That means a humble attitude is called for, and if there's something you don't know about technology, you can use the expertise of your students perhaps to learn more about it. Brilliant, using kids' own devices. If they have devices there and they are able to bring them to your classroom, then why not use them for learning? We're going to talk about that later this semester with classroom response systems. Delighting in discovery, newness, and fun is brilliant as well. So I just like those, I won't talk about that one, but I just like those brilliant ideas with technology. There are a lot of brilliant ideas to do, and let's avoid those ones that are not so brilliant. All right, well, have a good week.